Hello, Autry. My name's Anita Foster, and I'm the Library and Media Specialist at Autry Middle School in Kennesaw, Georgia. And today we are going to talk all about books. All right, so I get asked a lot about genres and what is a genre, and how do you put a book into a certain genre. So what's really cool is sometimes a book can overlap into multiple genres. So it could be a book that is action adventure and have a little bit of romance in it too. So it could go either in action adventure or relationship, or sometimes even realistic fiction. So sometimes a book will overlap into different genres, and what we try to do is we try to put it in the genre that we feel it most identifies with. So I have pulled several books today, and I'm going to end up reading probably just one of them, but I might read the others later in the week, so you never know. But I do want to go over the genres that we have here in the Autry CLC for you when you are here to choose from, or when you want to check out a book. If you ask me to pick the book for you, it gives you an opportunity to check the genres that you like and that you like to read, and I follow closely to that. So we have action and adventure. So some of the books that might be there are, we have this one series that's January through December. It's really cool, and it's like this spy mystery type man who has to solve some stuff, and so each book is 1 month. He has 1 year to solve it, and each book is 1 month. Action and adventure would also be like Loot. Loot is a hilarious book. It's funny as all can believe. It's hilarious, but they have a lot of adventure in that book, and it's a book about thieves. So that book is an action and adventure. Then we have like animal fiction. So any book where an animal is the primary character and the story is about an animal, we have an animal fiction. We have a lot of people that really like that genre. I personally am not one of them, but we do have a lot. So like the Warrior series is there. The Seeker series is there. The Owls of Garhul, I can never say it right. It's there. So, or the Guardians of Galhul, I think is what it's called, but it's about owls. It's there. Then we have our Dystopian series. Dystopian is one of my favorite. Dystopian is typically about, okay, how I do this is I tell you what a utopia is. Utopia is the perfect world. A dystopia is the opposite. So instead of having a perfect world, it is not a perfect world. And I always tell people that one person's utopia is typically a lot of other people's dystopia. For example, if you've ever read The Hunger Games, President Snow, Panem was his utopia. But for the people that lived out in the districts, it was their dystopia. So it was not a perfect world. There was, it wasn't fair to everyone. Things like that. The people that lived in the capital, it may have been their utopia, but the people that lived out in the districts, it is their dystopia. So that is what a dystopia is, or a dystopian book. So like Hunger Games is there, the Selection is there. It's typically a little bit in the future, futuristic, but society has kind of crumbled a little, or something has gone wrong with society, and so they're there. The next genre, we did not have, we went to putting fiction books by genre about 5 years ago, and we did not have this one. This is the only one we did not have when we switched over to genres. And about a year or two after we did it, I had a lot of students that said, Miss Foster, I would like to have classic literature as a genre. And I went, you're absolutely right. Because what was happening was the classic literature, like Jane Austen's books, or Sherlock Holmes, I think, is still, Miss Edson, correct me, am I wrong, Is Sherlock Holmes in classic literature or is it in mystery? Okay, it is in classic. Okay, so Sherlock Holmes, even though it's a mystery, because it was written so long ago, we put it into classic literature. And here's why. Like Jane Austen, and she wrote those books. When she wrote them, it was realistic fiction. It wasn't classic literature. It wasn't historical literature. It was realistic because she was writing about that time period. But more than 100 years has passed, and so now we consider that classic literature. And when we first started, it was in the historical fiction. And when a student said that, I was like, yeah, that needs to come out and be classic literature. So we added classic literature a couple years ago, and so that's why it's our only one that's kind of not in alphabetical order if you look on our wall, by genres. Okay, so the next thing, so like Black Beauty is in classic literature and not in animal fiction. So stuff like that. The next section is our largest section, our largest genre, and it is Miss Foster's favorite, and it is fantasy sci-fi. So we like to say that we have so much there that it is everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter. So your sci-fi is typically futuristic in space, and your fantasy is typically magic. So they overlap so much that we decided to put them in one genre, and it is our largest. The next genre is graphic novels. Graphic novels, a lot of people call those manga. Manga typically will open from the back and go forward, and you read it from right to left instead of left to right. However, we also have traditional graphic novels there that you would open it up and read it like you would read a normal book. But they have the pictures and the cartoon squares there. The next genre is the one that we have labeled with a bright orange sticker. That means Foster, stay away, because it is horror. I do not like horror. But what happened was, our first year that we had our genres, we had two bookshelves of only two bookshelves of books, and for horror. And within a few days of checking out during orientations and things, those bookshelves were empty. Empty. And I went, okay, this is a genre that I don't like, but by putting these in genre like that, I realized it's something that you guys do and that I need to support you in your reading. So we now have, I think it's 5 or 6 shelves of horror books for you guys to check out. Miss Mary is our expert on horror books, and I let her be that expert because I don't like horror books. Okay. The next genre is humor books. So Lemony Snicket and things like that, or we have some joke books that I've moved from our nonfiction section into our humor section. So we have those books in humor. This is the only other one that's kind of sort of out of alphabetical order. And that's because in the beginning, and I think even still, it just took up 2 shelves. So I put it where I could fit it rather than any place else, was poetry. So your Shel Silverstein books, Where the Sidewalk Ends, and things like that are in the poetry genre. The next genre is historical fiction. This again is one of my favorites, and it is our second largest genre. Historical fiction, it is books written about a certain time. So the story takes place in a certain time period. And so if like The Rock and the River is there, and that was a civil rights time period. I have one over here. One for the Murphys was written during a certain time period. I can't remember exactly which one it was written during, but I think it was like the 90s or something like that. But this is a historical fiction because it takes place during a historical event or during a historical time period. The next genre is another one of my favorites, and it's mysteries. So, we actually have some classics there too, like the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. Those are there. And then we also have some mysteries like this one. One of my favorite authors is Peal, and it's Joan Bauer. And this is a mystery because they're trying to solve it, so we have the red sticker there. And I forgot to show you, this is one of my favorites from Sci-Fi Fantasy, and it's black with a green dot. So mysteries are a lot of fun. I enjoy trying to figure out before the end what's really going on. Then the next one is sports fiction, and there we have our Tim Green books. I read this one the other day, left out. And this is from our sports fiction section, and it's an orange with a green dot. And then we have realistic fiction, so books that you could see happening now. And then the last one that we have is relationships, aka romance, but I'm in middle school, and so I prefer calling it relationships because not all relationships are romantic. Some are relationships between a parent and a child. Some are relationships between best friends, and it doesn't have to be romantic. So some of those could probably go into realistic fiction, but I have them in the relationships area. So for right now, what I'm going to do as we talk about books, I'm going to choose one of these over here that I have, and I'm going to read the first chapter, and then I'm going to give you a bonus, and I'm going to do a first chapter read with another one later today. So let me choose which one I'm going to do. I think I might do Peal. Okay, so it has been a while since I have read this, so this will be a cold read, but I remember reading this when it first came out, and it was one of my favorites. I think I've read it twice. It was that good. So Joan Bauer, I really like her writing. Her books are not too thick, so they're not too daunting for anyone who does not like to read a lot of books. It is 248 pages, so less than 250 pages. Some teachers want you to read a book with 300 pages. I just want you to read a book. I don't care how many pages. As long as you're reading and you're learning, then I'm good. Okay. Chapter 1 of Peal by Joan Bauer. And this is, again, in our mystery genre. Dateline, Baynesville, New York, May 3rd. Bonnie Sue Baumgartner, Baynesville's soon-to-be 67th apple blossom queen, let loose a stream of projectile vomiting in the high school cafeteria. Okay, any book that starts with somebody vomiting in the cafeteria, you know it's going to be a winner. It is. I mean, let's just go on and get that out there in the open. Any book where somebody's projectile vomiting, you know you're going to enjoy it. It was the tuna fish. She gasped miserably and proceeded to upchuck again. I wrote that down on my notepad as Daryl Jennings and I took a big step back. The crowning of the queen was tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the Happy Apple tent, a major moment in my small town of Baynesville, an orchard-growing community in upstate New York where apples are our livelihood and the core of our existence. Okay, I just want to stop here. So my late husband, he was from upstate New York, and we went to this apple orchard. And I'm just telling you a personal story. Yeah, you can fast forward if you don't want to listen to it. We went to this apple orchard close to where he grew up, and it's called Fly Creek. So when our son, who is now 18, he was, I think, in first grade, and they were learning about, what is it called when a company has like a slogan? And so we were quizzing him on some of them, and one of us said, happiest place on earth. And he said, Fly Creek. Because even though happiest place on earth is supposed to be Disney, to him, as a 5-year-old, we had gone every time we went up. And he had a lot of really good memories there. Fly Creek was his happiest place on earth when he was like in first grade. So I always get a chuckle out of that. But they did have the best apple stuff. Okay, just saying. All right, back to the story. The nurse rushed in. Daryl, the director of the Core, the high school paper, where I worked as a reporter said, "It's a cliffhanger, Hildy. The festival law says if the queen is sick and can't appear, the runner-up gets crowned." I didn't know that. He pushed his glasses onto his head and grinned. That's why I'm the editor. I jabbed him in the arm for the comment. For that comment. Daryl has been editing my copy for close to forever. Bonnie Sue heaved again, and the nurse mentioned something about food poisoning. My brother had food poisoning, and it kept coming up all weekend, Daryl whispered ominously. Stay on this, Hildy. This could be big. Bigger than big. I want the story behind the story. He always said that. Mrs. Perth, the festival coordinator, who also worked in the school office, ran in. She'll be fine, everyone. Bonnie Sue looked close to apple green. I felt for her. Honestly, even though she was the kind of gorgeous girl who acted like she was personally responsible for her looks, Mrs. Perth handed Bonnie Sue a tub of lip gloss. Bonnie Sue glossed and stuck her head back in the bucket. Everything, Miss Perth said fiercely, will be fine. She shooed us out of the cafeteria, but not before she said to me, Hildy, of course, we don't want to mention this incident in our paper. I looked at my notes. Why not? Hildy, the Apple Blossom Festival is about the hope of the harvest yet to come. Bainesville needed a good harvest. We were still reeling from 2 bad harvests in a row. This was to a make or break year for the orchards. I understand about the hope, Miss Perth, but a queen with food poisoning is kind of interesting, and Miss Perth forced out a smile. The apple blossom is the symbol of unbridled joy for the farm fresh produce. Her plump hand covered mine, and we wouldn't want that symbol to be tarnished in any way, would we? But Bonnie Sue had food poisoning. That's the truth. The truth, she snarled, is that we've had quite enough problems in Bainesville. This festival is committed to being happy and positive from beginning to end. Her eyes turned to slits. You're just like your father, Hildy Biddle. Thank you, I said quietly, then she shut the cafeteria door in my face. From behind the door, I heard Bonnie Sue bellow, I'm not giving up my crown. I earned it. It's mine. I wrote that down, too. I was standing in front of Frankie's fun mirrors, watching them stretch my legs and elongate my neck and head as the Apple Blossom Festival pulsated around me. 2 little boys ran up snickering. What's worse than finding a worm in your apple you're eating? The big one asked me. What? Finding half a worm. They grabbed their throats, shrieked, ew, and ran off. I made a face in the mirror, stuck out my tongue. Hildy Biddle, reporter at large. I headed across the midway. That was actually Bainesville High's football field. I walked under the great arch of blossoms, passing men dressed like Johnny Appleseed. I turned left at the storytelling tent where Granny Smith, our local storyteller, was holding forth. Did a twirl and a 2-step past Bad Apple Bob and the Orchard Boys playing their foot-stomping regional hit, You Dropped Me Like an Apple Peel on the Ground. Oh, baby, I sang along with them. Why'd you have to go? You're just like your father, Hildy Biddle. I guess that meant obstinate, unbending, always searching for truth. I can live with that. I remember being with Dad at the festival when I was little, riding the haunted cider mill roller coaster, hiding behind him when the wicked queen from the Snow White walked by with her poisoned apple. We'd eat fat caramel apples, drink cider till our stomachs would groan. Everywhere I looked, there seemed to be a memory of him. He died 3 years ago from a heart attack. I still can't imagine what God was thinking when he let that happen. I looked up in the sky and saw Lus Lundstrom, 2-seater prop plane flying overhead. I waved even though he couldn't see me. Les gave air tours of the Apple Valley. and I rode with him last year. I'll never forget the experience, flying low over the apple trees that were in full blossom. The sky seemed bluer than it did when I was standing on the ground. The valley seemed sweeter. The promise of good soil that people would fight for and cry over seemed real to me. Luss did his best, cackling ghost laugh as we flew over the old Ludlow property, a place some people in town thought was haunted. The ghost of old man Ludlow, Luss shouted darkly. Will we see him? I hope not. I had wanted to keep flying in the sky with Luss and not come down, but when your family owns an orchard, coming down to earth isn't optional. I headed to the Happy Apple tent, where the queen would be crowned. Bonnie Sue Baumgartner wasn't anywhere to be seen. She had missed the filling of the giant grinning apple balloon. She missed Mayor Frank T. Fudd's annual declaration. I can feel it in my bones. This is going to be the best festival ever. The tent was crammed with people. Tanasha Bass, my best friend and chorus photographer, was stationed by the entrance. A group of small children dressed like honeybees held hands and wove through the crowd. My cousin, Elizabeth, the Corps' graphic artist, who wrote for the paper only when we were desperate for copy, whispered, I heard Bonnie Sue's still at home. Daryl, our editor, shook his head. She made it to the convertible in her pink dress. And puked on the dress, I heard. That was Lev Radner, my second former boyfriend and Corps' marketing manager. I looked at Lev's thick, curly, dark hair, his blue eyes, his chiseled jaw. He was seriously cute, but I'm sorry. When a guy cheats on me, and this does happen with disturbing regularity, I'm gone. T.R. Dobbs, our sports writer, marched up. This just in. The convertible turned back. How do you know this? I demanded. I never divulge my sources, T.R. said, smiling. Big woman approaching. Tanisha pointed to Mrs. Perth, who was chugging towards the tent, apple blossoms bouncing on her straw hat, not a happy camper. I stepped into her path. Mrs. Perth, could you? She almost ran me over. Are you coming? She barked, looking behind her. I looked to see Lacey Horton, the apple blossom queen runner-up, walking hesitantly towards the tent, not in the traditional pink dress with the pink heels, but in jeans, boots, and a work shirt. Lacey was president of the horticulture club, and like me, the child of a family orchard owners. She caught up with Miss Perth, who snapped, How you could think you could represent the growers of Bainesville dressed like that, Miss Horton, I will never know. Lacey smiled sweetly. All I know how to be is myself. Miss Perth harumphed and handed Lacey a tub of lip gloss. Lacey handed it back. I took notes like mad. Tanisha snapped shots. Suddenly, another photographer elbowed his way past Tanisha and started photographing Lacey. Tanisha tapped him on the shoulder. Excuse me. The guy ignored her. His cap read, Catch the Buzz in Bainesville. Read the Bee. The Bee is our local paper. Miss Perth hissed. Let's get this over with. Lacey looked down. She wasn't gorgeous like Bonnie Sue, but she was pretty enough, with dark brown hair and green eyes. Congratulations, Lacey, I said, grinning. How's it feel to be queen? Weird, she whispered. We've had so many challenges in town, I continued. What's it mean to you to be queen of this year's festival? Miss Perth interrupted. We don't have time for I'd like to answer Hildy's question, Miss Perth. Lacey smiled at me. It means that maybe I can help people understand what it's like to be a small farmer. I felt like cheering. Lacey wasted no time redefining her role. She stood on the stage, one hand steady on her crown, the other holding the microphone. We all know in Bainesville how things can change suddenly like the weather, she began. People chuckled, that was for sure. I know that lots of you have come from out of town. We welcome you to Bainesville and hope you have a wonderful time at our festival. I'd like to say something to all the people who are growers in this area. She looked around the packed tent. It's been a hard 2 years. My family, and I know that firsthand, lots of us have suffered, and the bad weather has hurt our crops. But I know how much every grower loves their land. That's why we're still here, still able to celebrate the hope of the new harvest. I'm so proud to be a part of this. She turned, grinning to her parents, who were beaming in the front row. We can't give up, Lacey continued. We need to stand together. So today, let's celebrate the hard work and the good land and the wonderful produce that comes from it. The crowd burst into applause. Tanisha's little white dog, Pookie, ran across the stage in a sequin pink sweatshirt and jumped into Lacey's arms. Pookie is the unofficial mascot of Bainesville. A huge roar of approval went up. A little girl tugged my shirt. Is she a farmer or a queen? Both, I said, smiling. Cool. Yes, very cool. I titled my article on Lacey, Long Live the Queen. I included the behind-the-scenes vomiting drama, written sensitively, of course. I tried to interview Bonnie Sue Baumgartner to see how she was doing, having lost the crown and all, but she told me to take a walk in dog poop and mind my own business. It was one of the best pieces I'd written for the paper. I'd officially broken free now from the early days of high school journalism with growner topics like Hooray for Health Week and Locker Safety for Dummies. But I wanted to take on more. All summer long, I read every piece of fine reporting I could get my hands on. I practiced writing lead sentences and drove my family and friends crazy asking questions all reporters have to ask to get to the meat of the story. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. You know what? I think it's the same things you have to learn when you're writing a paper for language arts. All right, back to the story. By July, my grandmother Nan would head the other way when she saw me coming. Hildy Biddle, she'd shout, I swear, if you ask me one more time what I'm doing, where I'm going, why I'm going, when I'm coming back, who I'm meeting with, and how I'm feeling about the world, I'm going to start screaming and not stop. Asking questions is an art, but not everyone appreciates the beauty. I kept asking questions all summer as the spooky signs began to appear on the front door of the old Ludlow house. I have a little picture here of the sign, so I'm just going to read them. Danger to all ye who enter the domicile of doom, Armageddon. Who's putting up those signs? I asked. No one in town knew. What should be done? I demanded. Why isn't someone tearing them down? When people have had a few bad years, they tend to let things go. A few weird-looking characteristics were coming to town, too. A few weird-looking characters were coming to town, too. One woman I saw had a shaved head and was wearing skeleton earrings. The guy she was with had a deathly white face. Where's the ghost house? They asked drearily. Up on the hill, I told them. Then in August, the high school auditorium roof collapsed without warning. School hadn't started yet, thank goodness. No one was hurt. I felt like something bad was seeping into the atmosphere. Until that is, you've looked at our fields, which were finally bringing forth an abundant harvest. That it's hard to think dark thoughts when you're biting into a juicy peach. Though to focus on ghostly gloom when you're gobbling sweet corn slathered with salted butter and finishing the meal off with blueberry shortcakes with mounds of fresh whipped cream. By late August, the tables at the Bainesville Farmers Market were heavy with heirloom tomatoes, sweet nectarines, heavy plums, summer squash, and peppers. The early apples were rolling off the trucks, crisp, sweet, and filled with the promise that so much more was coming. There were a few stories in the Bee about the Ludlow place and how there'd been a ghost sighting. Some unnamed business person who claimed to have seen old man Ludlow's ghost quoted, I think Bainesville's better brace itself for trouble. Do you think that place is haunted? Tanisha asked me. I wasn't sure. I just wanted the house to go away. Everyone was talking about it. My father always told me, when a story keeps coming at you day and night, pay attention. Dad was a reporter too. The phone call came in early September. I'm here to tell you, I paid attention. So that was the first chapter of Peal. Are you hooked? Are you hooked? Okay, so if you want to check this book out, we have a couple of copies of it. I believe we even have an ebook on Destiny Discover that you can check out. But if you want to check these actual books out, just go to Destiny Discover and put it on hold, and we will pull it for you by next Monday, and you can be reading it at your home. So, yeah, Peal is one of my favorites. All right, Autry, I hope you had a great day learning about genres and about one of my favorite books, Peal.